Today's street scene's at the National Packard Museum here in Warren, Ohio at the 22nd Annual Motorcycle Exhibit.
You know, I'm so excited, Rick. You know, Christmas, New Year, and then it's the big three. It's the National Packard Museum's motorcycle exhibit, where you're going to see some of the coolest, neatest bikes, and you know what? They're all almost locally produced. You cannot believe the amount of great motorcycles that are historic in nature that are right here in the hands of guys in this valley.
We have about 34 bikes on display, plus we have some stuff from artwork from Guy Shively, one of our local pinstripers and artists around here, and it's very interesting. Not only can you see the bikes, there's a lot of Packards in here also, which are beautiful.
All right, let's get going. We'll check out some of the neat bikes.
Let's go inside and check it out. Today we're at the National Packard Museum here in Warren, Ohio, and with me I have Mary Ann Horenchek, the Executive Director of the museum.
Very good.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to the museum.
And what do we got going on today? We got the 22nd Annual Motorcycle Exhibit.
Yes, It's amazing that we've been doing this for 22 years, but because it went by so fast. But we're very excited to open this Saturday, and we're featuring the Buell. We've moved away from the theme type motorcycle exhibits to now starting to feature a particular motorcycle or brand. So this year's our first one in that lineup, and it's the Buell racing bike. Really great history, but every bike in here has a wonderful history, and it's a broad spectrum of bikes here.
We got sport bikes here, we got race bikes here, we got a little bit of everything.
Yeah, we have veteran bikes. That's the really old ones, the racers,
scooters,
street bikes, service cars. So it's a pretty broad category. So if you're into motorcycles or you just even passively like them, there will be something here for you to see.
Sounds good. So this exhibit starts when?
It starts Saturday.
Which is the date?
The January 8th.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
I lost track. We've been working on this for a little while. January 8th, it opens at noon, and it runs to May 21st. And our hours are noon to 5, Tuesday through Saturday, 1 to 5 on Sunday. Admission is $10 for adults and $8 for seniors, $5 for children 7 to 12. Under 7 are free.
That's good. I've been looking around. Some of these bikes are really nice.
They're very cool. I did the plaques on all of them, so I kind of know a little bit about them, but I was having trouble pairing a plaque with a bike.
Yeah. So if you come in here to look at bikes, you could also look at the beautiful Packards in here, too.
Absolutely. The Packards, there's a lot of Packard family history here, Packard artifacts from their personal lives, and of course the cars. So
we have,
there's a lot.
30 bikes on exhibit?
We actually have 34 bikes on exhibit.
Okay.
This is the biggest number we've ever had in 22 years, so that's kind of cool.
And how many cars do we have on exhibit?
23.
23, okay.
Yes.
So you got over 50-some vehicles.
Yeah, you could spend well over an hour in here just looking at bikes, and probably another hour at cars.
There's a couple cars in here I could just stare at forever.
I'll tell you.
They're beauties.
Yeah, they are rolling luxury for sure. So. And of course, we have the Howard Hughes car back there that everybody pays attention to right now. It's pretty cool. The idea that a billionaire decided to buy a Packard when he could have had any car in the world, that's pretty telling of the quality of Packard of the day.
Oh, they were a great car of its time, yeah. Marianne, thank you very much for inviting us today. We're going to have a good time.
You're welcome. Enjoy your stay. Have a wander around.
We're going to go inside and check everything out now.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Larry Ward from the National Packard Museum, where the 22nd motorcycle exhibit is going to begin this weekend. And with me right now is Jim Iacozzelli from MotoZilli, home of the Triumph, Yamaha, and Royal Enfields. Jim is the director of the exhibit this year. And let's talk to you a little bit about the change in the exhibit this year, Jim.
Sure, Larry. It was great to be part of it this year. This is the first time that I've been involved at this level. The gentleman who started it, a group of gentlemen back in 1999, because this is the 22nd annual motorcycle exhibit here at the Packard. The Packard Museum was looking for something to do during the winter to pull people in. They reached out to a couple guys that had some vintage motorcycles, and here we are 22 years later, and hundreds of motorcycles that have been on exhibit here at the Packard. Something that's changed this year, Larry, that we kind of copied the Barber motorcycle exhibit in Birmingham, Alabama. In the years past, we've always had a theme, or the guys that were running the exhibit here always had a theme. Last year it was Roll Your Own, which were bikes that were custom built from scratch. So they used a stock engine from one of the manufacturers and then built a chopper or something around that. Each year that we did the named bike or had the theme, myself having the dealership down the street, we always had customers or people come in and say, oh, I went to the Packard Museum, but mostly it was all choppers, or one year it was mostly dirt bikes. It never really fit, you know, kind of everybody in interest. So this year we thought we would go away from the theme, and we're calling it just the 22nd annual Packard motorcycle exhibit. And we're offering something from mini bikes to scooters, to pre-war, post-war race bikes, just trying to get more of a variety. We thought it'd be great for Grandpa to bring his grandson in and say, you know, I had one of those, or my neighbor had one of those. So everybody could kind of relate to something that we have on exhibit this year. So we're giving it a try. We hope we get a great turnout and get great feedback, and we'll continue to build it.
I was just checking out some of those bikes in the other room there, over 100 years old.
Sure,
yeah. Very interesting how they worked. And
then someone like the Server car, where, you know, the car dealer took that motorcycle, three-wheeler, towed it behind a car so that he could pick up the customer's car to bring it back to get service. So a lot of different history and things. The little Honda CT70.
Some scooters.
Yep, everybody that's in our age group had a little Honda mini bike back in those days. So that's kind of what we're going
Everything
after.
that is old is now coming back to be new. He talked about the Server car, which is basically a three-wheeled motorcycle, if you will. And now they call them tri-glides, and they're very big, and they're very, very popular, especially for guys that are getting up in the years like myself.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at
We're glad you're there, Larry.
I am there. And so, you know, sometimes it's difficult, especially if your knees are starting to go in that. So those tri-glides, those three-wheelers are becoming very popular. But when we look at some of the history of motorcycling in the United States, you know, a lot of people think of Great Britain with the Triumphs and stuff, but when you go back to the history of motorcycling, it was literally Indian and Harley Davidson, and then as we started to bring it forward, you had an imaginative guy that was an engineer that worked for Harley Davidson called Eric Bill, lived right over here in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, and he built and it maintains one of the most iconic motorcycles. In fact, we have what I'd consider one of the holy grails of Buell motorcycling right behind us. You want to tell us a bit about it, Jim?
Sure. Larry, actually what we've done this year, being that we went away from the theme, we decided each year to have a marquee bike. Just one bike that has a lot of history that we can tell a story, or a story can be told about the bike. And there was no better bike or manufacturer to start with than Eric Buell. Eric was a young guy in our area, spent a lot of time road racing at Nelson Ledges, motocrossing in the area. Always had something strange, Yamaha motor and a Harley frame, and as a young kid at the racetrack, it was almost like, whoa, how are you gonna ride this thing, Eric? But he was always thinking, and lived in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, as you said, graduated from the University of Pittsburgh, and went on to work at Harley Davidson. Prior to that, he worked for some local Harley dealers in that Gibsonia area. And fortunately, Bill Bumgarner from Newcastle Harley Davidson still had basically the original Buell that Eric built. And at his time at Harley-Davidson, he was road racing at a high level, national events, and with his engineering degree that he ended up getting at the University of Pittsburgh, not what he was doing as a young kid coming to racetrack. There wasn't a whole lot of engineering going on at that time, but you know, he graduated, wanted to get into building bikes, ended up leaving Harley-Davidson, but knew that they had a handful, maybe 20, 30 of these 1,000cc Harley-Davidson motors that Harley tried to use in the XR1000 street bike that didn't work for them. So Eric was able to purchase those motors that were left from Harley-Davidson, and he was able to build basically a hand-built sport bike to try to compete at that time with what we called the sport bikes or crotch rockets, the GSXRs and Honda Hurricanes. And the RR1000 was Eric's first production motorcycle. When those engines ran out, 2 years later, then he went to a 750cc engine from Harley-Davidson because they were available. So it's just great to have some local history that has gone to a big level. It ended up to the point where Harley-Davidson bought the Buell motorcycle brand from Eric, and they market it for many years. If you're in the area, you remember Youngstown Harley-Davidson. They were a big Buell dealer. Bill at Newcastle Harley-Davidson was a big Buell dealer. It had a big following. There's still a lot of them on the street. We still see a lot of them at the dealership.
You know, we want to throw a shout out to Bill Baumberger at Newcastle Harley-Davidson. Want to thank him for his awesomeness and loaning us that bike for the exhibit this year. Now, Buells are a lot like stock cars, a lot like stock car racing. There isn't anything stock about that Ford or Chevy that you see, even though they want you to think about it. Let's talk a little bit briefly about the engineering on the Buells, a little bit about, you know, what makes them so special, Jim, because they performed well on the track.
Yeah, it was a lot of his engineering and a lot of the design that Eric, you know, had in his race experience, going back to those days at Nelson Ledges when he was piecing together different brands to make something work. The single shock type suspension that he has in it, the forks, the steering dampeners, the full fairing, pretty much everything on the motorcycle other than the production engine is handmade and unique to the Buell motorcycle.
That's all him.
It's all Eric.
Did all that. He
Yes.
just shoved the Harley engine in this.
Correct.
Okay.
And then he went on from there, as Harley-Davidson bought them, then they started manufacturing their own type of motor based off the Harley-Davidson motorcycle. But this motorcycle here, pretty much other than the engine, everything was built from Eric's design.
And I'll tell you how far forward thinking Eric was. Once the contract ran out with Harley-Davidson and he took the company on his own, he created Eric Buell Racing. And he invented like perimeter brakes and stuff like that. But like you said, custom built motorcycle for the high-end street rider. And eventually, at the very end of it, those 1150, 1250 Buells became one of the rockets in road racing up until the end of the company there.
Yes, that's right, Eric. You know, they were on the podium at many big races. They
So
had
is
to
this
go.
a street bike?
This is a street bike.
Okay.
So, you know, as racy as it looks, this was Eric's idea of a competition for that time. The Suzuki GSXRs, the Honda Hurricanes, the Yamaha FZs. So this was his first production street bike. That's why if you look close enough, it does have lights, turn signals,
Yeah,
you know, but
mirrors.
everything's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
thought it
hid
was
in
a
there,
racer
but
at
it
first,
is
yeah.
a street bike.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
you could probably race it though too, right?
Correct,
Street racing.
and that's what was happening in those
Yeah.
days. In the production classes, then the guys were able to take the lights, take the turn signals off, and pretty much go racing. Larry and I were just looking at the tires on it, which are the original tires, and they were the race tire for back in that era, for sure.
All right, that about does it. Talking about the Buells and that. Jim, how long is the exhibit going to be going on?
So we're going to start here on this Saturday, which will be January 10th, I guess will be the date, and we run all the way through Memorial Day weekend. So just a couple days before Memorial Day weekend, we'll be closing it up from there.
All right, now when you think about it, and as you're watching this on Armstrong, you'll realize that it's probably 20 degrees out, snowing like get out. So you know what? For $8 or $10, you can get in, you can see the Packards, and then you can see the 22nd motorcycle exhibit. There's a lot of great bikes here, a lot of history, both in the back end and also in the front end. So I encourage you to stop by.
Jim, one more question before we let you go here.
Sure.
How well did these do on the track?
They ended up doing very well. At first, this motorcycle here, for those guys who did try to take the lights off and go racing with it, the horsepower wasn't there because he was using pretty much a stock Harley-Davidson engine. But as Eric progressed, he was on the podium at many, many big superbike races. And the EBR motorcycle, which after Eric left Harley-Davidson, the Eric Buell Racing, they were called EBR bikes. Many of those were at the national level and doing on the podium. So it went very far from here. This was the start of it, but it progressed very far.
How many of these did they make, you know?
We were looking at that earlier, and it's less than 30.
Less than 30,
Yeah,
okay.
it's right around there. And this one only has no miles on it. It has 4 miles on it.
geez,
So
very
yeah,
good.
it's a nice
If
piece.
we were to establish a value for this bike, it's an 87. I consider it one of the holy grails. It's in mint condition. What do you think, something like that? Because you know what bikes are going for, and you certainly buy enough of them. So,
Yeah, I would guess something like this with the history that's behind it. Eric being from Pennsylvania, coming from a Pennsylvania dealer, it was probably handed to the dealer from Eric. I would easily say it's a $50,000 motorcycle, easily. Yeah.
that's why you need to be at the Packard. So we'll see you down the road at the Packard. Alrighty, second stop at the National Packard Museum. It's the 22nd year of the motorcycle exhibit. Jim and I are stopping by, and we're looking at one of the fan favorites. You remember the old phrase, you meet the nicest people on a Honda? Well, right here is the old Trail 70. Jim, a little bit about these bikes. We all had them when we were younger.
This is where it all kind of started, I think, for anybody or everybody that's ever had a motorcycle or had an interest in having a motorcycle, that we're now in our 50s, 60s, 70 years old, as we were just talking about. Yeah, I think Larry's got us all beat. But anyways, so this is where it all started. You know, we either had a little Honda QA50 or Z50, but the most popular by far was the Honda CT70, the Trail 70. 71, 2, 3, 4, right in there. Locally, you know, Honda Warren, Honda Niles, sold hundreds of them. I can remember Honda Niles being open 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and dancing girls on the roof.
No.
All the crazy things, you know, from back then. And
Boy, I'll tell ya.
but this is where it started. So this is a great find. It's an original barn find. Actually, the gentleman from Howland, Dave Oski, owns this unit, and it was given to him. Somebody basically had it in the barn, so it's something that's never been restored. It's just how we had it when we were riding them when we were kids. Two different models. There was a 3-speed and a 4-speed. This particular one is the 4-speed. Many different colors. I think there was like red, gold, blue, a few different colors you got into. But this was it, and then from there they went to the SL70s. The SL70s went to the XR75s.
Right.
But
Then start moving up.
I'm sure everybody that rides right now had one of those little Hondas, and like Larry said, that was the theme back then, right?
Yeah, you meet the nicest people on a Honda.
And that's where it started.
You think about it, Jim, they were pretty crafty at Honda. They started out and getting you on these little things, and then started moving you up, boy, and pretty Soon, you ended up getting on a CB 160 and then a 305 scrambler, and moving up in that. But and I got to tell you, I've had a bunch of different bikes, and as Jim as well. But if Honda didn't bring a motorcycle over, I don't think when I was 16 I could have afforded a Harley or a Triumph or something like that. The Hondas were quality and they were dependable. If you just changed oil on it, the thing would last your lifetime.
And Larry, if you think about that, when Honda brought the mini bikes over, if you wanted a small bike as a child or for your child, basically all you could get was the lawnmower engine, the true mini bike with the lawnmower engine and suspension. And it's kind of funny because we have this bike in our on-off-road section of the exhibit here, and it is a street bike. It was street legal. It has turn signals. It can have turn signals, but it's got headlight, tail light, and everything to make it street legal. But all of us that had them, you couldn't ride them on the street. So the first thing we did was start ripping the lights off and painting them, and making them into a dirt bike.
Out.
And that's where the next step that Honda came out with the XR75.
Right.
That was the first dirt bike, mini bike that you could buy as a child. And like you said, Larry, then they went from the XR75 to the CR125 motocross bike.
And now we're really stepping up.
A full motocross bike on the market.
Now these bikes, because a lot of us, when we were younger, didn't have funds and that to go pay mechanics and that. So a lot of us tried to fix these things ourselves. And the first thing we'd do is, hey, we're going to take off the air cleaner. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the baffle. Well, little did we know that we're making the bike slower. But Jim had a great story to talk about a transmission. This is, I laugh because this is exactly what happens to everybody when we're younger, when we're trying to learn how to work on things.
All right, Larry, so I was going to go a different direction because you first said you take the air filter off, and that's exactly what everybody did. They took the air filter off, they went and rode woods, and it sucked a bunch of dirt into the motor, and you usually burnt the rings out, and the motor started smoking, and you had to have it rebuilt. I had a little different story because I was fortunate to have an SL7 and riding down in the Warren area for North Road where I grew up, and blew the transmission out of it. So myself being, the smartest 11-year-old in the United States at that time, I figured I would just rebuild the transmission myself. And took it apart, no problem. It was very easy to get apart. It came time to start putting it back together, and I couldn't get cases together. Didn't know really what I was doing. So, of course, the best tool to use when something is stuck is a hammer. and I grabbed the hammer off the bench, just pounded on the cases, couldn't get it together. Got frustrated, threw the hammer across the garage, went out the window and landed on the hood of my dad's new Suburban. My dad at that time, and my family owns a baking company, and they always had new trucks, and it was one of the company trucks that the hammer skidded across. After my scolding and patching the window, my father went to the neighbor who did a lot of motorcycle repairs in the garage. He took me at that time to Honda warranty. Honda informed him that that transmission was under warranty and they could fix it free. So got the parts. We got the bike built. Many years later, at my dealership, I have an exhibit down in the basement, a museum living in the basement, and the gentleman who lived next to my parents at that time, who I hadn't seen for almost 40 years now, came into the dealership from Cleveland, and he still had that transmission gear from that bike. That the story goes behind to kind of prove the story of frustration and throwing the hammer, but there it is, young kids, and that's what we did. We didn't have video games, we didn't have TV we used to watch, and when my bike broke, we fixed them in the garage, just like you said, Larry. You start ripping the lights and everything off the bikes and them into the dirt bikes.
Well, let me first, or last at least, I want to thank the Jim for taking over the directorship of the Packard exhibit. I was a part of it a couple years ago. Bruce Lee, who you'll meet later or meet earlier, he has been a part of it almost from day one, maybe was from day one. But I also want to encourage you to go to Moto right up there on Route 45. I call it Warren, Cortland, Warren.
It's basically champion.
Yeah. And not only has he got a great service team led by Dwayne and a great sales team led by Keith, but he's got a super cool museum down in the cellar. So take a trip up here during the day, and then before the end of the day, get up there and take a look at the museum.
We invite everybody, obviously, to the Packard Museum and definitely to our exhibit downstairs. Not so much the dealership, but yeah, please come down if you have an interest in what we have found. And the reason I want to be so involved is the Packard Museum, I think on Saturday opens at 11 or 12. We open at 9 o'clock. So a lot of the guys do their Saturday morning get together, or they're going to do something Saturday with their wife or girlfriend, whatever. And they'll come to our place at 9. When we open, they'll hang out in our museum downstairs for a couple hours, and then come up here, go through the Packard, which you're going to spend a few hours going through the Packard at a minimum. and then you can go to lunch somewhere in the area. So it makes for a good Saturday afternoon or Saturday event.
Well, as a motorcyclist and a guy that's bought a bunch of bikes and ATVs from Jim, I can tell you that it's a great place to go, and it's a true old-time feel to the dealership. You can get in there, you know, hobnob with the guys, drink some coffee, and if you buy something, okay, and if you don't, okay, it's just a great place to stop by. I want to thank Jim for always being there for all of us in the motorcycling community.
What I got right now here at the exhibit, the 22nd motorcycle exhibit, we got some of the oldest bikes here. In fact, they are the oldest bikes here. Some of these are hundreds, some years old. And with me here is one of the, what do you call yourself?
Exhibitor.
One of the exhibitors, Bruce Williams. You probably remember this mug from last year and the year before here at the motorcycle show. And Bruce is going to get us through some of these bikes here. And let's start off with this. Probably the oldest one, right?
This is a 1999 Thor.
Okay.
It's a single speed direct drive. You have to start it on the stand and warm the motor up.
Okay.
And then you shut it off. Take it off the stand and pedal it to start. You turn the handlebar to put the thing on retarding the spark and taking the valves and lifting them so there's no compression. Then as you pedal forward, you drop the valves in, hopefully the motor starts, and away you go. Every time you stop, you have to pedal start again. From 1903 to 1907, Thor made all of Indian's motors.
Okay.
When their contract with Indian was completed, then they were able to start making their own motorcycles. So Aurora Automatic Machine in Illinois is the company that made them. It's magneto ignition. Doesn't require a battery. There's no lighting on it. Lighting at this time is optional. There's no front brake.
So this was a street bike. Then.
It's basically a bicycle with a motor.
Right.
40-ish mile an hour, maybe.
That's
Roads
pretty good
aren't
speed.
that good.
Now
The bikes are better than the roads are.
That's pretty good speed back then.
They've got big wheels on them because the roads are rutted deeply. And they would use roughly a pint of oil to a gallon of gas.
Oh, yes.
There's no oil control rings in these early motors. They're made to consume oil as a consumable with the gasoline. And at this time, the gas cap is real little. There's no gas stations yet.
Oh, they used to
So
funnel.
you're buying gas from the apothecary or a hardware store in 1 gallon tins. And they called it naphtha. It was white gas. And
This is all a gas tank here? No oil tank or?
well, it's partially oil tank. Toward the
Okay,
back.
okay.
About 3/4 is gas and 1/4 is oil. Roughly most of the early bikes, 2 to 3 gallons of gas and 2 to 3 quarts of oil. What they would hold.
So you basically film the same time then, it would just mix.
No, they don't mix.
They don't mix, you
No,
have
no,
to.
they stay separated
Okay,
because they're four-cycle motors. And the oil, when you turn the oil on, it just is in this machine, it just goes out of the oil tank. This is oil here, and then gas from here forward. Oil goes down into the motor, hits the flywheels and splashes. So they were just splash lubrication. If these old motors don't have a blue haze coming out of the exhaust pipe, they're not getting enough oil. So if they started to seize up, they would pull the plunger up, give it a hand shot. And old books say you would give it a shot. Oil every 3rd telegraph pole at speed.
oh jeez. So when you, let me ask you a question. You said something about heating up the engine. What do you mean by that? Before you started.
When you have it on the rear stand,
Okay,
you can pedal it and not move it anywhere.
all right.
So you would pedal it to start it and leave it on the stand. Warm the motor up, then shut it off, then put it on the ground and then pedal.
Okay.
Start it up as you pedaled away.
Okay. So you're
There's
basically...
no clutch on this. It's a direct drive.
All righty.
There's no clutch on this one. It's also direct drive.
Let's go to this one. This is a Yale, a 19...
This is a Yale.
1910
It's a 10
and a half.
half.
Okay.
And they made it a half-year model because they had a frame problem. And they were able to rectify the frame problem, so it became a half-year model.
And this is an Ohio built.
Yes, made in Toledo.
Yeah.
Originally, it was called a Yale California. And they were made in California, then consolidated, bought Yale, California, and they became Yale Toledo.
I've never heard of a Yale before. But there's
Well,
a lot of them I haven't heard of.
They quit making
Yeah.
motorcycles in 15.
Oh, okay.
Well, 7 to 15 in Toledo. And they also made a twin. This is a 3.5 horse motor. In 1911, they increased the motor dimensions and made it a 4 horse motor.
So who owns this one?
This is owned by Bruce Lindsay in Grand Falls.
Okay, and this one also is
So this one.
on loan to for the
On
exhibit.
loan to the museum for the exhibit.
Yeah, these are pretty interesting. And what kind of a light we have here?
That's a carbide light. You would
Okay.
put carbide rock in the bottom, put water in the top. You would dial how many drops you got, and the water dropping on the acetylene rock would make, or on carbide rock would make acetylene gas. And you would open the front of the light and light it with a match.
Oh, there's a wick and everything. Oh.
Well, it's not a wick, it's a jet.
Okay.
Because these work on gas, not oil.
Okay.
Oil lights have a wick. Up. And you'd close it up. And this little top thing here is a chimney that gets real hot. Back then, they had the port and starboard in green. So you had lights on the sides. I don't know if that's a throwback to boats or yachts or what.
Is this considered a road bike?
Yes.
Or a race bike. Okay, because there was a lot of race bikes people made just for the track back then.
Well,
So-
basically, if it was a race bike, it was just raced. There wasn't a lot of difference. About this time, they started to port cylinders and take the mufflers off them and change the gearing. But pretty marginal brakes. It's just a coaster brake like a bicycle and the back wheel on it.
Yeah, they look just like bicycles. Yeah.
They are basically.
Especially the
it's
Thor.
a-
Look at the Thor. There,
It's a
yeah.
heavy-duty bicycle with a
Yeah.
motor.
Okay, let's move on, Bruce, to this 1913 Nsu Tt. This is your baby.
Yes, I built this bike from part of a motor.
Okay.
We made everything else on it. It's a replica of the 1913 TT racers. NSU had two racing bikes in the 1913 Isle of Man TT. And they placed 4th and 7th. At that time, it was a single-speed drive. Racing speeds at that time were roughly mid-30s. They might have gotten a little faster on the straights, but a little harder going up and down the mountains. Okay, the Isle of Man races started in 1907. They're still doing them. And it's off the coast of England. And the reason they started on the Isle of Man is because England had a 5-mile-per-hour speed limit. And the Isle of Man was agreeable to let the motorcycles go faster. Yes. Yeah, and you had to have somebody with a flag walk in front of you so that the horses wouldn't be scared from the...
This NSU is a racer, you said. And what kind of tracks did they have back then? Were they wooden tracks or what?
No. This was made to race at the Isle of Man, and it was a 37-mile loop around the island on the city and country roads.
Where's the Isle of Man at? They still have that, right? The Isle
Yes,
of
the
Man.
race is still being run.
Okay.
Longest continuous road race in the world.
Okay.
And it's off the coast of England.
It's still in the same place.
Yes, and they originally started in the Isle of Man because England had a 5-mile-per-hour speed limit, and they wouldn't raise the speed limit for the people that wanted to race their machine.
5 miles an hour, jeez.
At this time, most of the machines were still single speed. Mm-hmm. This one was direct drive. Indian had a machine that was a 2-speed. Mm-hmm. In 1913, NSU was able to get 4th and 7th place in the TT.
So this is the German-built bike. What's NSU stand for?
It's at the Neckarsulm, the town of Neckarsulm,
Okay.
at the intersection of the Neckar and Ulm
In Germany.
in Germany.
Okay. And you made quite a bit of parts on this thing.
We made everything but part of the motor.
You showed me some of the stuff before.
Well, this is an original piece,
Okay.
and this is a homemade piece.
Okay.
The rocker arms we made frame, we made the tanks, we made the handlebars, we made the exhaust, we made the cams and the cam cover. We made the valves and valve guides.
And this is oil and gas also, right?
Right, the front tank is oil, the back tank is gas.
Okay. The same with the Yale and the...
Here is a drip feed. There's a little window here. You can set how many drops are going down into the motor. Again, it's a splash lubrication. And if you needed more oil, you would bring the plunger up and give a shot of oil.
So when it
And
wasn't...
would also get down the tube into the motor.
So when it wasn't blowing blue smoke, you pumped it up.
If it didn't have any blue smoke coming out of it, you're going to seize the motor.
Yeah. I'm learning a lot today here, huh?
This early, they don't have oil control rings in the piston.
So how long did it take you to build this thing?
14 months.
14. That's it.
That was my COVID project.
Well, that
stayed
was
home.
Sure. And parts you couldn't find, you made
We
them
were able to
yourself.
buy nothing.
Nothing. How many of these exist? You know?
That I know of, there are 5 of these available.
Wow.
This being one of the 5.
Did nice. Looks brand new. What a beauty. What a beauty. And this is a race bike.
Yes, sir.
It was built for a race bike, and that's how it's built. Now we're moving over to a 1915 Austro Omega. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's all original.
All original. Never been painted. And we found it in the back of a barn near Union City, Pennsylvania. I think I've had it 35 years. And it was made near Vienna, Austria.
So it's Austrian.
It's
Pretty
a
neat.
V-twin, belt drive, 2-speed transmission, with kickstart. Kickstart's somewhat in its infancy. This is probably about the third year for Kickstart.
And what were these used for? Were these like war things?
The
War
handlebars?
vehicles? No, the bike itself. What were they made?
Well, it's just a street bike.
It was just a street bike. Okay.
It's got a second seat on it, and passenger pegs that fold out. 1915 Pennsylvania porcelain license plate. It's about 400 cc's. And the front part of the tank is oil, the back
Just like the other one.
out here back is gas. And it's the same as the other early bikes. They're made to use oil. You know, a pint to a gallon is pretty common usage.
Would you call this a Springer front end?
That would be what they call a girder fork.
A girder fork. Okay.
And controls are there's clutch and brake.
Front and rear brake.
Yes, this actually has two brakes. It's early to have two brakes.
Okay.
And this is throttle. This is spark control. This is a hand oil pump. This is a meter. You can set how many drops a minute are going to go into the motor. Another carbide headlight. Carbide rock in the bottom, water in the top. Meter your water flow.
Can you still buy those rocks? Put them in there?
Yes.
Could you?
Miners. Lanterns use carbide rock.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's the same
And
same
a lot of the
setup.
guys that they're cavers use these little lanterns. So it's still there. Union Carbide makes it.
Yeah. You know any of the history behind this? With
I know where I got it near Union City. Before that, supposedly, it was found in New Jersey, I think in the early 60s. And from there, I don't know.
yeah.
Don't know any history prior
This
to
is
that.
an oldie but goodie, huh? I don't
But
see
it runs real
It
well.
even has the marking on it there. Pretty nice. Pretty nice.
We had it in Daytona one year, and they had a kickstart contest, and we primed it and got everything set and gave it half a kick, and it's running. And the guy looks back and says, "Anybody have a bike older than 15 that'll start in a half a kick?"
And you did.
And we won.
Like a suicide shift here.
Yep.
I thought Harley was like at the beginning of those suicide shifts, but
Well, everything had lever shift at that time.
right.
The two-speed Indian, the lever was up here on top of the frame tube. This is a horn.
I love it. That's right. That's my. I asked him. What is that thing? It's a horn. Okay.
All right, Larry Ward. 22nd annual motorcycle exhibit at the Packard Museum, the National Packard Museum, with Bruce Williams. And we're talking about a 1950 Porex, and this is a factory, what I would consider a factory road racer. Let's talk a little bit about the bike. We'll go from the front to the back, Bruce. A little bit about it. And there's some historical significance to the people that were involved with this as well.
Well, this is a 1950 semi-works racer. Not really a factory bike, but built at the factory with the blessing of the owner. The fork is a standard 1950 fork. The frame was handmade for the racing machines. They only make two of them. The bottom of the motor is from 1933. The top of the motor is 1950 Sport, which is a single port big valve head. It's Got an Amel Racing carburetor. At that time, all the horse motors were unit construction with the transmission as part of the motor. Because this was a racing machine and they needed the road race ratios, they used the Morton Racing gearbox.
Well, let me ask this, Bruce. I noticed that as we look at the motor, this almost looks like a bevel drive out of a Ducati kind of thing.
No, it's
Talk
not
about
overhead
that.
cam. That tube houses the push rods and the oil supply and return to the head.
Okay. And then over here we've a mag.
Yes, it's magneto ignition.
And then down here it's looks like an early form of road racing rear set. It's
Right. Yeah, they put those on the frame toward the back and up higher than normal. If you're semi crone, I guess you would call it when you ride it. And then the rear suspension is what they call a plunger. Where there's a set of springs underneath those rubbers. And it has about 3 inches of travel in the rear. Open megaphone exhaust.
one of the things I noticed is the tachometer on a bike like this, Bruce. It's at roughly 350 cc. What would you think the power output and the top speed and the RPM would be?
About 6,000 RPM.
Oh,
It's still a push rod motor.
that's pretty good though.
And the top speed would be close to 100.
Now, when these were in production, so like a semi-factory road racer, or into production as a factory road racer, what were some? Were there any characteristics, common flaws, good or bad on the bikes?
On a road racer, they only made two. One was lost in a fire in '53, so this is the only surviving example.
And then this is owned by you.
Yes.
How long have you owned the bike?
25 or 30 years.
When was the last time you started it?
Oh boy.
Because I'm looking at the curve and I'm thinking it's been a while. Probably.
Long time. 20 years.
Pretty soon you're going to start your own museum. Probably could.
I'm just going to stay in my garage.
Now, you're very prolific on finding old bikes, and I mean 1913, stuff like that. Tell us, how do you go about getting examples like this and some of the bikes we looked at with Rick?
Well, this was kind of a fluke. I had a Ducati that I wanted to trade for an NSU, and I went to to New York to make the trade. And the guy said, you want to go look at this Horex at the bike shop downtown. And I went to look at it, and the guy said, I could never find parts for it. And as soon as I saw it, I knew what it was. And I bought it and brought it home, and then did a little research. Fortunately, I was able to talk to the guy that built it and the guy that raced it before they passed away. And that's when I found out that they only made 2 of them.
Well, you know, a lot of times with these bikes, especially the Horex and some of the really the old stuff, you know, the parts aren't readily available. You might have to get blueprints. Talk to us about how do you source parts, and if you can't, what do you do on making a part?
Well, on these, I sourced nothing. We made everything we had to have. Cool. We made the oil tank, it was missing. The magneto was missing. Fortunately, the motor was there, the head was there, the head pipe was there. We had to make the megaphone. The gas tank was there. And I had to make the seat that was missing. The wheels were junk, and I wound up finding another bike that I robbed the wheels from.
Well, let's talk about one final thing. If a guy wanted to get into this, seriously getting into something like this, and you got to have a lot of different skills besides a big fat wallet. But what are your recommendations? Any suggestions to the budding guys that are going out there trying to find this? If everybody thinks they're Mike Wolf and, you know, pickers and stuff.
All the ones I ever found, it was just a word of mouth thing. You know, this just happened because I was making a trade for something else. My 1906, a fella told me about it, and I was kind of chasing it, and then the guy that owned it passed away, and I lost track of it for several years. And then I was talking to another fella, and he says, "Oh," he says, "I think this guy's got it." So I went and talked to him, and I asked him what he's going to do with it, and he said, "I can't do anything with it." And I said, "Well, you sell it." And he said, "Make me an offer." Well, it was rusty and missing lots of stuff. And I made an offer, and I didn't hear from him. And I said, "Oh, I guess I'm not going to get it." And he called me back and he said, "Can you go up $100? I said, "Yeah." So I brought it home.
All right.
In a box.
Now you're a member of the Antique Motorcycle Club. I was thinking that might be a good resource for a person trying to get involved, learn a little bit about this, tell us a little bit about the Antique Club.
Well, the Lake Erie chapter of the Antique Motorcycle Club of America is basically Northeast Ohio and Northwest Ohio also. The AMCA, the main club, is countrywide, actually worldwide, but most of the chapters are here in North America. And they have a dozen or so meets through the year. And that's how I found my 1911 Yale. It was just through talking to a fella, and he had torn a barn down and found some parts. And I asked him what he's going to do with it. And he says, well, I'm an Indian guy. And I said, well, I got some Indian parts to trade. So I traded my leftover Indian parts and got an 11 Yale.
Now, with the advent of, we've got Facebook now, Facebook Marketplace, there's eBay, there's still Craigslist. There's a lot of resources, but some of the bigger swap meets. Let's talk about the one real quick out in Western Ohio there, over
that
by...
That would be the
Wasion, right.
And that's probably the largest antique motorcycle meet in North America. And it's a great place
Phenomenal.
to find parts. But basically, you just, and the internet's done wonders to make things easier. When I first got this one, I traveled to Europe to try to find parts for it.
Oh.
There was no internet at that time. And my 1915 was the same way. I had it before there was internet. But now you can pretty much let your fingers do the walking and go all over the world. And I've looked for pictures of the cams, and I didn't know what the cam profiles were. And a fellow in Australia had a bike apart and made me drawings of the cams.
Pretty cool.
And another bike, I was doing the clutch on it, and I was missing pieces, and a fellow in California had one apart. And he made me drawings, so we were able to replicate the parts that were missing.
Well, Bruce, collecting bikes is a lot of like, oddly enough, collecting Hot Wheels. And there's one drawback to it. Like, you could buy every Hot Wheels out there every day, but you finally figure out that you have to stick with something. So if a guy's getting into this, would you say stick with something you like, stick with something you can afford? How would you suggest? Because this is a big part of getting younger people involved in this stuff.
Both of those things. The thing about restoring one, if you restore a little Honda Trail 70. It cost the same amount to chrome an exhaust pipe for a Trail 70
Yep.
as it does for a BSA Gold Star, which is much more value.
Oh, yeah.
So, is it dollar for value, or is it what you like? I guess it's both, or either. I kind of go with what I like. And the older I get, the more I'm gravitating toward the earlier stuff. I wish I would have started with the earlier stuff 40 years ago.
Sure.
It was more affordable at that time.
Well, let me say this in closing from all of us in the motorcycling community. I want to thank you for all the time, the patience, and the dedication that you've shown to the National Packard Museum, both in forms of their automobiles and that. And in particular, you've been a part of all of the motorcycle exhibits, and so from all of us, we want to thank you, Bruce.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed doing it.
'22nd annual motorcycle exhibit here at the National Packard Museum. Wow, huh?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that about wraps it up. There's over 34 just absolutely gorgeous motorcycles. Now, take a look at January and February. What are you going to do? I mean, for a small amount of money, like $10, you get to come in. I guarantee you're going to wow away 3 or 4 hours, and you're going to be just floored at the Packard exhibit. Motor cars built right here in a warm Ohio that set the standards excellence and performance for years. And then you're going to walk around and see 34 of the greatest motorcycles, from things just like little Trail 70s all the way up to XR 750 racing bikes, to the old 1900 Yales and stuff that, just you'll never see them again.
What was your favorite, Larry?
I'll tell you what, I liked the Veloset. I like that the best. It speaks of timeless styling, high performance, and it just looks like a man's bike.
I like the old stuff I've never heard of before, stuff you've never seen before. When we were talking with Bruce with the Yale and the Thor and all this, that's very interesting stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, Rick, I could ride those bikes. I don't think I could ride those bikes.
They're interesting though. Look at them. They're just
let me tell you what, you got to get them going, you got to pedal them, you got to turn the Venturi on the carb, you got to flip a switch, pump the oil. I don't think I could do it.
A long time ago. This is before your days, Larry.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that it's before my days. I know.
Well before your days. Don't put it that way. I'm not much younger than you. So, hey, thank you for watching Street Scene. We got Larry Ward, Rick Gurrera.
We'll see you
down
at
the
the
road.
National Packard Museum.
Whoa.